Are there any limits to what you would insure in the environmental space?
If you look at liability, you can choose. You can choose to either only insure your own site, your liability towards your own site, cleanup costs and such, or you can decide to clean up, to cover your own site and third party, including the biodiversity, so on and off site as we call it. You can limit yourself to pollution, or you can add on damage to biodiversity. So it's what the Germans call Bausteinen. You can take building blocks, to construe your environmental insurance. So, in my opinion, obviously, I would always go for the full Monty. Cover it all. Just cover it all, because you never know where it's going to hit you. Is it going to be something on site? Is it going to be off site? Is it going to be biodiversity? Is it going to be a transportation risk? Is it something to do with your waste as such? I cannot tell you what's going to happen, but you can very easily have, waste which is badly conditioned, which finds itself on a third-party location to be destroyed, and it starts leaking. You have an environmental incident at a third-party location you do not own, which is not adjacent to your own. It is your waste doing this there. So, I'd go for the full cover. Full historical, full new conditions, full biodiversity, full waste, the full thing. But you can choose.
Are there any types of environmental risks you would not want to insure?
That I would not want to insure. I would not want to insure a bond to the authorities, which gives them an immediate access to the insured funds without questions asked. Because in that case, the authorities could come in to the insurance policy with whatever excuse that they find you're liable, but you're not found liable before a court of law or for any administration. Only the authorities think, well, that looks like a rich guy. Let's get some money out of him and pay for something he may be liable for or not. Who cares? Just get the money and run. And then you have a very, very hard time getting the money back. So I wouldn't want to do that. That's a bond insurance. Let's not go there. And obviously, the type of risk. Some industries, they can recycle all of their waste. The more they can recycle, the less they need, insurance that covers their waste profile. I wouldn't insure that. Now, that's for the liability part. Financially speaking, you can ask the question, which limit would you advise for which type of risk? And there the answer is very simple. There is no correct limit to advise. You can only say benchmark. Claims experience you have had and what other companies are doing. So what are they thinking that they can be liable for? That's the benchmark. And other than that, any limit is the correct one or not. Small business, 5 million, medium business, 25 to 50, oil, petrochemicals, 100 at the least. My point of view. The reality of the thing is, small businesses, they have 1 to 2 millions. Medium businesses, maybe 5. And chemical industry and oil industry, 25, maybe 50. That's, that shows you the perception of the reality.
Let's talk about the assessment of environmental risk. Can you tell us a little bit how do you go about assessing these types of risks?
Well, in order to assess these type of risk, we have a questionnaire where we ask who they are, what they do, day-to-day activities, where they are located, what the environment is. I mean, environment like neighbors, subsoil, level of the groundwater, the direction of the groundwater, all these kind of questions. The historical use of the site. Was there a car factory in past years? Was it a chemical industry? Or was it just, grazing lands for cattle and such? That will help. The question also about any incidents known to them, to each and every location. And if we are to consider historical pollution incidents, which is important, always advise historical pollution incidents to be covered, then we would need to have a intrusive soil survey, what we call a phase 1 soil survey, a general inspection of the soil, and a phase 2 report, which will go into identified matters. So at a certain spot, you have identified certain raised levels of some product. Well, in a phase 2, you will go into that. You will try to limit the zone where you find the product. You will try to determine how much product are we in excess of standards or not. Do we need remediations or not? So a phase 1, a phase 2 report. These questions answered help us to determine the environmental risk and to set a price against it. We had a very difficult time to get biodiversity insured when it first came up in 2007 upon the enactment of the Environmental Liability Directive. Nobody could tell what amounts it could end into. You have to imagine one of the penalties, one of the compensations, one of the what they call remediations foreseen in the Environmental Liability Directive, which is concerning biodiversity, is the loss of ecological function. Now, a loss of an ecological function means that you're gonna estimate what the value is, the added value is of this ecological phenomenon which you have killed off, and what will it cost if you kill the fish in a river? What will that mean? How much compensation will we have to pay for that? The example of the Erika is one that got ciphers on it. So the petrol container ship, the Erika in France, it sunk. Now, in reality, it did happen before the Environmental Liability Directive got enacted. You know, it's a past history. It's end of the 90s. But still, the judge in France, deciding on the case, he awarded something more than 70 euros per dead bird from the incident. That is something he inspired himself on the Environmental Liability Directive to give this, because this is actually a loss of ecological function. And to whom did he award it to? To the environmental organizations. Exactly how it will work in the ELD. But can you imagine the Erika? It killed a lot of birds. You know. But what is the amount? Nobody knows. Now we know that in Hungary the claim is already 470 million plus. You know, that's scary.
What is your vision regarding the future evolution of environmental insurance?
Well, in my mind, environmental insurance will just become one of the basic pillars of any company's insurance portfolio. Secondly, it will be a driver for improved working as towards creating environmental risks, or in this case, eliminating environmental risks. Because the more you eliminate them, the lesser your cost will be. And you know what? A company, it's always cost driven. If you put things into a cost, they'll work on it to lower the cost as much as possible. So in this aspect, two things. Everybody will have environmental insurance, and environmental insurance will be an important part of driving down environmental exposures.
Can you imagine which new type of environmental risks may be insured in the future?
New types of environmental risks?
Yes,
that maybe
like a rocket falling from the sky, or a satellite, or anything you can think of.
I think when considering planet Earth, we may see that companies as a whole might get some responsibility as to climate change, as to CO2 exhaust, other than financial instruments like emission exchange market and such. You will see that the emission change market, let me put it this way, if I invest in my company to have as little as emissions possible, I will get certificates. I can put it on the market, I can sell them. Now, if for some government decision, all of a sudden these emission rights get to lose their value, I sustain a big loss. Now, environmental insurance may pick up that environmental loss. So it may create confidence in order to invest in emission rights, well, in creating emission rights as a market, and knowing that if anything goes wrong with it, still my environmental insurance will pick it up. So emission rights, yes, that's something, and that has directly to do with climate change. Let's not be romantic about it. You cannot insure climate change because who created it? But you can help by being in assistance of that phase that comes before climate change, emissions. And if you can put that into control, or help to put that in control as one of the factors, well, you did a good thing, didn't you? So I think that will be the next thing to come.
In which regions do you believe there will be a big growth in terms of environmental insurance?
Well, obviously anything which has to do with petrol industry, refinery, storage and all of that, because that's very destructive. Anything to do with chemical products will obviously be something that will require this, pharmaceuticals,
Geographically, any thoughts?
Geographically?
Yeah, yes.
Well, geographically, I think that Europe and the US of A are in a very good shape today in respect of environmental legislation and in respect of insurance. We're really building the markets. Disastrous regions are China, India, terrible India. Some parts of Africa, where all of the white good waste of Europe and the United States is, exited to, where very toxic processes are built in production facilities. People die like flies. Nobody knows. We have some. If you read the news behind the lines, you will find that some major companies, and I will not name them, have some major lawsuits running about some incredible situations that they have maintained in Black Africa in the past 10 years. I'm not talking 100 years ago. I'm talking the past 10 years when all of us were alive and it just happened. That's a pity. So geographically, those are countries that will have to develop. And maybe if that will be a part of aid to these countries, European Commission might, help them to put in force environmental legislation as we know it. A good example is Latin America, where we have a really developing market in that. So, initiative.
There are two groups you didn't talk about in terms of them buying and using environmental insurance. One is public bodies, and the others is individuals. How about these two groups? Why are they not using it? Will they use it?
The public authorities, are less inclined to do so because actually the community is paying for any damage. The authorities are not so much insured as that they have the tax money to back them up. That's why. Now, there is a change in their minds. Let's expose our tax money, better invest into insurance. There's a change, in anything that can be catastrophic. So now, big building projects, for example, they tend to be, or to get environmental insurance. The Beltway in Antwerp, for example, was subject to that. The Big Dig in Boston, it got environmental insurance. The tunnel works in Nevada, in the US of A, it got environmental. So big building projects, they try to get that. So, probably in anything else, no. Anything else, no. Individuals, they might need environmental insurance. Now, again, as I said in the beginning, environmental legislation is the basis of environmental risks. Environmental legislation does not require individuals to do probing in their soil to find pollution. So if it doesn't require, how will you find it? How will it become a risk other than maybe a sudden and accidental event that maybe would burn down your house, it would burn down your house, it would have your petrol tank to heat with the heating fuel of the house break somehow and lose the product of the floor. It all may happen, but the quantities are so small that the impact that you may have on the environment, is, you can't forget about it. So individuals, they are not targeted by the environmental legislation. That's one thing. So there won't be a special product for them, environmental-wise speaking. But property insurances do tend to extend their coverages to give a very little supplement to an environmental impact that they may have, like a 50,000 or 100,000 euros coverage, and that will do, because that will maybe, be the max exposure an individual may have. So it's outside of the environmental markets. It's just a commodity.
By listening to you, it seems you need a lot of different types of expertise to properly assess and manage environmental risks. How do you access this diverse expertise?
Well, the people that are working in environmental insurance, they come out of either, like me, law school, so they're very familiar with the legislative part of the thing, and the insurance part of things, because that's something that comes out of the law school environment. Or you have people who have studied bioengineering or biochemical studies or such, and who have little knowledge about legislative things other than permits and such required. Both have to learn from each other, inevitable, because there is no study that prepares you to become a fully expert in environmental insurance or environmental risks or environmental risk assessment. You need both. So either you come out of the one, and then you do seminars and self-study and such to get knowledge of the other, or vice versa. That's how it comes to be. And then, if you've done it 15 years, you start knowing. I'm totally in favor of green products, but we need to be mindful of the ways these get produced and minimize to a maximum extent possible the toxic influence the production process of these and the recycling process of their waste as a total concept, not just the green product itself, the green way it produces electricity, the green way it produces energy, the green way it provides in mobility. That's not enough. How did it come to be and how is it disposed of are very important factors in my mind to judge a product to be green. Not just, it drives without using petrol. Great. That's not enough.